Manchester covered the sky that morning, but the glow emerging from inside the club's training center was so intense that it seemed to dispel any sign of shadow. The atmosphere behind the scenes was dominated by a sense of construction, planning, and future vision. The citizens were not just thinking about the next match, but about the next chapter in the club's history. And that chapter appeared to have a name etched into it: Josko Gvardiol. The Croatian defender, who arrived quietly as part of a structured plan to renew the defensive backbone, had now become central to a debate involving trust, strategy, and ambition. The board, captivated by his performances, had already begun to move the gears to secure something few imagined at the start of the season: a new, stronger, and longer contract capable of deterring any foreign interest in his future. It was fascinating to see how it all unfolded. While many expected names like Stones or Akanji to continue as the defensive foundation of the project, Gvardiol stood out for his consistency, tactical intelligence, and ability to perform in multiple positions, something Guardiola values more than any statistic. In recent weeks, analysts pointed out that he had been one of the players who evolved the most within the squad, which naturally made City accelerate internal discussions about his contract renewal. The idea is not just to extend a deal, but to build a defensive security guarantee for the coming seasons. With recurring injuries, cycles closing, and the need to reform sectors, Gvardiol emerged as the answer, not only for the present, but for the future of the club. It is curious that, at the start of the season, the club was even open to listening to offers for Akanji, and Stones' situation remained uncertain, mainly due to contract length and the tactical changes Pep might implement in the coming years. Meanwhile, young Finley Burns was gaining minutes and experience at Girona in a strategic loan that could turn him into another gem polished by the City Group system. But even with several promising players available, the name that everyone pointed to as indispensable was Gvardiol. The Croatian represents the defensive modernization that Guardiola has always pursued: aggressive in ball recovery, efficient in passing, intelligent in game reading, and capable of initiating build-up play as if he were a midfielder disguised in defense. The new contract would be more than a reward. It would be a symbol of a new defensive era, similar to when Ruben Dias was signed and quickly became a central figure in the dressing room. The difference is that Gvardiol is still very young, and his ceiling seems limitless. Sources linked to the club revealed that negotiations are at an advanced stage and that his stay is not just a wish, but a priority. Pep wants to build the defensive system of tomorrow around him, and the board understands the message. When a manager like Guardiola deeply trusts a defender, the club moves, and quickly. And this is where a broader vision comes into play. Guardiola is confirmed until 2027 and wants to begin this new cycle with players who understand his philosophy and can represent it on the pitch, especially in defensive transitions and build-up play from the first line. With a new defensive project taking shape, Gvardiol could become the reference point of a line composed of flexible, technical, and mentally prepared players for City's style of play. The fans are beginning to see this, and some believe that if Aguero was the symbol of the offensive transformation, Gvardiol could become the representative of the defensive identity Pep wants to consolidate. As all this unfolds, another story is beginning to grow massively within the Etihad. The search for a creative talent capable of transforming the midfield and offering top-level support to Erling Haaland is stirring the background. The idea of signing someone who complements Foden and elevates the team's creativity to another level has fueled rumors over possible interest in Arda Güler, the young phenomenon who has been dazzling European football with his class, refined technique, and potential to become a world-class star. The English and Spanish press agree on one thing: he could be the new Foden, or perhaps something even greater. Phil Foden, of course, remains one of the brightest figures of the season. After a year of fluctuations, he rediscovered his identity playing deeper as a creative number 8, capable of distributing passes, carrying the ball, and breaking lines with short and intelligent dribbles. This revived his lethal connection with Haaland, creating a partnership that seems so synchronized it almost communicates without looking. This season alone, Foden has delivered decisive assists for the Norwegian, including one in the Champions League, where the play went viral on social media. A guided control, vision, and a perfectly weighted pass for the giant to nod home, a move that defines the City style. But in the midst of that, a name is quietly gaining ground, almost like a promising shadow: Arda Güler. The young Turk, currently shining in Madrid, has impressive numbers, but more than that, he has a captivating style. Left-footed, creative, skillful, a specialist in passing between the lines and possessing privileged vision, all at just 20 years old. Under technical guidance, his development was so rapid that he has already delivered multiple assists to Mbappé, showing that he can link up with top-level players, understand their movements, and create unique opportunities in the final third. This caught the attention of several European giants, but City have emerged as a strong candidate for his signing. Analysts say he could be a kind of Foden 2.0, but others go further. He has Ballon d'Or potential. His numbers support the argument, but it is his playing style that seduces. If he were to arrive in Manchester, he could replicate or even surpass the chemistry he developed with Mbappé. Picture Güler finding Haaland between defenders with those vertical assists that dismantle entire defensive systems. Picture Foden and Güler orchestrating the midfield while De Bruyne mentors both in his final years. City would not just be acquiring a reinforcement, but building a new creative identity. The price? Around $88 million expensive? Yes. Exaggerated? Maybe. But within City standards, which seek excellence and strategic planning, it seems more like an investment than a gamble. Interestingly, part of the board sees this not as a replacement, but as evolution. Instead of thinking about who leaves, they are thinking about who can elevate the team to another level over the next 3 or 4 years. And that is rare in modern football, where immediacy usually dictates decisions. But not everything revolves around signings and renewals. There are also cases where the club's planning clashes directly with the interests of players' representatives, as happened with Claudio Echeverri. The young Argentine talent, who dazzled in the United States during the Club World Cup, seemed destined to have a carefully planned pathway within the City Group structure. The club's idea was to loan him to Girona, just like they did with Vitor Rice, giving him a controlled environment, with a style of play similar to Manchester City, favoring his technical and tactical development. But Echeverri's representatives insisted on Bayer Leverkusen, believing the Bundesliga would offer more minutes and visibility to the midfielder. That decision is now viewed with suspicion. The player has had little game time and failed to establish himself, unlike Vitor Rice, who rapidly grew at Girona, gaining minutes and confidence. Internal sources suggest that City may bring Echeverri back in January, completely re-evaluating his development plan. The situation created frustration within the club and among supporters, who question whether choosing Leverkusen hindered the progression of a talent who could have been learning directly under Pep. Even so, history shows that City do not abandon their projects easily. The board intends to reassess all loans in the next window, and Echeverri's is the most delicate of all. Some say the club still sees huge potential in him, but understands that the right environment and guidance are fundamental. And where would he find that? At the Etihad campus, or in a club aligned with the City philosophy. And while the future of prospects is debated, another name is already living his glorious present: Jeremy Doku. They say he is not only the best winger in the Premier League. A Manchester City legend claimed he might be the best in Europe right now. That statement gained traction because it came from someone who knows the soul of the club and can recognize talent when it manifests strongly. Doku has become more than just a rapid dribbler. He is now one of Guardiola's main tactical weapons, especially when City face compact defenses sitting in low blocks. His aggressive style, his unpredictability, and his ability to make quick decisions make him a nightmare for any defender. As matches progressed, it became clear that Doku is not just a player with pace, but with intelligence. He has learnt to better choose when to dribble, when to cross, when to finish. And in a team like City, where wrong decisions are costly, this made Guardiola trust him even more. The manager sees in the Belgian a rising talent, someone who could become one of the protagonists of the city project in the coming years. The challenge now is dealing with expectations, because the public is already used to expecting magic every time he touches the ball. All of this shows that Manchester City is experiencing something special. They are not just a winning team. They are a project in constant transformation, a laboratory of talent, a club that, while conquering, is already preparing the next chapters of its story. And you, citizen supporter, are right in the middle of it, living and witnessing the building of something greater. It is at this point that Manchester City's narrative takes on contours unlike any other project in world football. Because, while many clubs simply react to market shifts, City anticipates them. It predicts the future. It shapes its own path. And the examples are everywhere. With Guardiola, the club is already planning its defensive foundation for the coming years. With Foden, it consolidates a creative identity that has become a trademark at the Etihad. With Doku, it shows how raw talent and daring can be refined until they become decisive. And with names like Arda Güler and Echeverri, they reveal that the renewal cycle is continuous, strategic, and calculated. Nothing is random. Nothing is casual. When we look at the pitch, we begin to notice how all these pieces of planning start to express themselves on the grass. The movement patterns, the creative combinations, the spatial intelligence. All of this is the result of years of mental and tactical construction. Guardiola has always said that to understand his team, you must understand that they do not just play football, they interpret the game. And players like Foden, Stones, Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, and now Doku are high-level interpreters. Each one, in their own way, tells a story with the ball. Perhaps that is why names like Güler generate so much interest, because they fit into this system of mentality and creativity, not just physical or technical attributes. The numbers show his potential, but it is his style that enchants. When he receives the ball between the lines, when he pauses the game, when he accelerates with vertical passes that break defensive systems, he demonstrates something that Guardiola values deeply: control of time. It is not about speed. It is about rhythm. It is about controlling the moment. And that few young players know how to do. With Doku, the case is different. He does not control time. He breaks it. He is the creative chaos that the system needs. When the game requires order, De Bruyne or Rodri appear. When the game requires imbalance, Doku appears. And that is where the genius of Guardiola's system lies. He creates order only to then deliberately destroy it, disorganizing the opponent with precision. Doku is the agent of this disruption, and that is why many believe that he can not only be the best winger in Europe now, but also dominate the scene for many years. Meanwhile, the Echeverri case continues to generate debate. The decisions made at this moment could determine whether he becomes just another promising talent or whether he becomes a central piece of a winning project. Many within the club recognize his intelligence, but also understand that the environment in which he develops is fundamental. A creative midfielder needs freedom, trust, guidance. At City, this exists, but perhaps the system at Leverkusen was not built for him. That is why the potential return in January is being discussed with greater seriousness. There is even an interesting view among specialists. Many believe that City want to build a creativity trio for the future: Foden, Güler, and Echeverri, each with different but complementary characteristics. Foden, vision and control. Güler, elegance and passing. Echeverri, improvisation and offensive instinct. Imagine that trio feeding Haaland, Doku, or a future center forward we do not even know yet. It would be the 3.0 version of Manchester City's creativity, a city that no longer depends solely on De Bruyne, but that has a new generation ready to take over. Meanwhile, the defensive sector is also undergoing transformation. Guardiola, still young, already shows signs of silent leadership. He is a player who does not need to shout to be heard. His positioning, his reading of the game, and his confidence cause his teammates to naturally adjust around him. Guardiola loves this profile of leadership: discreet, intelligent, influential. Ruben Dias, with his vocal and intense style, may continue being the emotional commander, but Guardiola, with his composure, may become the structural commander, and that is why the club want to tie him down with a new contract swiftly. This defensive duality is something other clubs have not been able to replicate. While some have physically strong defenders, others have technical players. City is specializing in combining strength, intelligence, and build-up play. And that is why opponents struggle so much to press City from the start of the move. The team does not just defend, it builds. And Gvardiol is the personification of this, a center-back who initiates attacks with the same naturalness with which he blocks dangerous passes. And so, each sector of the team is being planned with balance. The attack combines raw power with creative lightness. The midfield combines control and chaos. The defense combines security and construction. It is as if the club were creating a complete tactical organism, where each part has a function, but all communicate with one another in harmony. And at the center of it all, there is Guardiola, not just as a coach, but as an architect, defining every piece, every profile, every function. That is why when a supporter thinks certain negotiations are exaggerated, or that $88 million for Güler is risky, or that renewing with Gvardiol this early is unnecessary, they might not be seeing the full picture. It is not just about strengthening, it is about perpetuating an identity, about ensuring Guardiola's philosophy survives even when he is no longer there. And that, perhaps, is Manchester City's greatest ambition at this moment, to create a tactical and creative legacy that lasts for generations. And as if all that were not enough, there is still one final ingredient: the dressing room, the internal environment, the human chemistry which often influences more than strategies, contracts, and millionaire negotiations. And this environment today is one of serenity, trust, and ambition. Young players have freedom. Experienced players have a voice, and everyone understands the role they play. That is why Foden and Haaland have evolved so naturally. That is why Doku adapted so quickly. That is why Gvardiol, in such a short time, has transformed into a reference point. It is from this union that the modern Manchester City is born. A team that plays beautifully, but also with purpose. A team that wants to win, but also wants to build. A team that looks for trophies, but also looks for history. And, citizen supporter, you are seeing this happen before your very eyes. And the deeper we dive into this construction, the more we realize how Manchester City operates with an almost handcrafted logic within an environment dominated by million-pound business. For many clubs, signing a player is about filling a gap. For City, signing a player is about solving a puzzle. Each player needs to have a clear role, but must also be flexible enough to adapt to systems, ideas, and even future evolutions of style. That is why, at City, a player can be a fullback one day, a center-back the next, and a deep-lying playmaker on the third. It is not improvisation. It is a project. Josko Gvardiol is the latest example of this philosophy applied with perfection. He is not just a center-back or a fullback. He is a play initiator, a space controller, a silent commander of the defensive line. It is no exaggeration to say that Gvardiol thinks the game like a midfielder, but executes like a defender. That is why Guardiola sees him as a long-term pillar, and that is why the board want to secure him now, before his value becomes even more unreachable. The renewal is not protection, it is construction. In the same line of thought comes the reasoning regarding Arda Güler. The club does not see him merely as an alternative to Foden, but as a complement. Creativity in modern football cannot depend on just one brain, and Guardiola understands this well. When Foden needs to drop deeper to balance possession, Güler could be the one breaking lines further up, and when the team needs control and rhythm, both can play together, modulating the tempo of attacks like conductors on the pitch. Imagine a city where the attack does not depend on individual explosions, but on collective understanding, where the ball moves from foot to foot as though it had a life of its own, where Haaland receives cleaner, sharper, more elegant passes. That is what City envisions when targeting talents like Güler. And what is most interesting is that this kind of planning does not come from emotional impulses. It does not arise from frustrating defeats or thrilling wins. It is born from studies, projections, and deep market analysis. Even while competing for trophies, City mapped the talents that will rewrite their future 5 years from now. It was like that with Haaland. It was like that with Ederson, Stones, Bernardo, Foden, and it is now happening with Gvardiol, Doku, Echeverri, and possibly Güler. It is as though the club is always 2 windows ahead of everyone else. But it is also true that even with planning, football remains alive, unpredictable, dramatic. And that is where stories like Claudio Echeverri come in. He represents that fine line between potential and reality, between promise and affirmation, between perfect planning and risky execution. The idea of sending him to Girona made sense within the Citigroup system. The Catalan club understands Pep's tactical principles, trains with similar standards, prepares players to perform specific roles when they return to Manchester. But when his representatives chose Bayer Leverkusen instead, believing that the Bundesliga would be more explosive and formative, the plan came off the rails. Today, many look at the situation and wonder, did City lose time, or did they gain learning? Perhaps both, because now the club understands even more the importance of controlling the environment where their talents develop. A creative midfielder like Echeverri needs confidence, rhythm, and freedom, something that does not always exist in teams fighting intensely for domestic titles like Leverkusen. That is why the possibility of bringing the Argentine back has gained strength. He may not be ready to be a starter, but he may be ready to learn in the right place. And sometimes, learning is even more important than playing. Meanwhile, someone who has already learned, and quickly, is Jeremy Doku. The Belgian realized that to stay at a high level at City, it is not enough to dribble beautifully. You need to dribble with purpose. It is not enough to be fast. You need to be decisive. And in recent months, he has shown exactly that. Doku is learning to do the simple things without losing his essence. He has learned that, sometimes, the pass is more dangerous than the dribble, that the pause can be more deadly than the sprint, and that game intelligence is just as important as movement. These details explain why a club legend said he is, right now, the best winger in Europe. This evolution also explains why City believe he can go even further. Under Guardiola, wingers are not just accelerators of play. They are space creators. They are conductors of chaos. They are strategists with speed at their feet. And Doku is learning to be all of that at once. When he combines with Foden, when he accelerates with Haaland, when he draws double marking to free space for De Bruyne, he is doing tactically what was once only expected from creative midfielders. And that is the kind of player who defines the modern era of football, and it is in this context that the backstage comes to life. While the media focuses on names, fees, and rumors, what happens inside the club is even more fascinating. Players talk among themselves, share visions, exchange experiences. De Bruyne advises Gvardiol about silent leadership. Bernardo speaks to Doku about keeping calm in the final third. Rodri guides Foden on spatial awareness. Haaland, with his brutal finishing instinct, encourages the youngsters to think the way he thinks. Attack the space, anticipate the move, feel the goal before the ball arrives. It is these invisible relationships that build something no amount of money can buy, collective identity. And Guardiola observes it all, sometimes in silence, sometimes with that look that blends genius with creative restlessness. He knows he will not always be there, and this might be City's biggest challenge, ensuring his legacy survives him, not only in trophies, but in essence, in style, in philosophy, in mentality. And that is why all these discussions about contracts, transfers, and talent development are much deeper than they appear. They are not just negotiations. They are small bricks of a historical construction. Today's Manchester City is not just winning. It is teaching. It is experimenting. It is evolving. And gradually, it is creating an identity that will be remembered not only as an era of trophies, but as an era of transformation. And that is how, citizen supporter, we understand that Manchester City is not just building a team. It is building an era. While some clubs think about next season, City are already aiming at the next cycle, the next game model, the next identity. With talents like Gvardiol solidifying the defense, Foden assuming creative protagonism, Doku revolutionizing the attack with speed and intelligence, and youngsters like Echeverry and potential signings like Arda Güler representing the future, the club is designing something that goes far beyond the present. It goes beyond the now. It goes beyond the pitch. It is project, it is vision, it is legacy. And if you want to keep following all of this, every rumor, every move, every plan, every detail that shows how City are reinventing themselves, you need to stay with us here on the channel, because this is not just news, this is analysis, backstage insight, understanding. Here, you do not just know what is happening, you understand why it is happening. So, if this content made sense to you, if it helped you understand Manchester City's current moment better, now it is your turn to be part of it. Leave your like because it strengthens our work immensely, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so yet. Activate notifications so you do not miss the next updates, because what is coming in the next few weeks could once again change the course of this season, and perhaps even the next years of the club. A big hug, see you in the next video, and as always, here you are one step ahead.